republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Yes.
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 Motion to approve the agenda.
I'd move.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we've got one hearing. It's on the specification form of contract for the water system improvements, water main extension. Scott, you want to tell us anything about this, and then I'll open the hearing?
Essentially what this project is to connect the new water tower and booster station to the main water system and the south water plant. And as a result of that, as you see the map in your council agenda, we have a 12-inch water main going up 24th Street from the intersection of Industrial Road. We have another 12-inch going up to the south on 6th Avenue West. That's a gravel road. Both of them come together at the intersection of 6th Avenue and 24th Street, and the water tower's right east of that intersection. There's a small piece from that intersection to the future Central Avenue that will be 16-inch in size, and that'll make the actual connection to the water tower. From that location of the future Central on over to K49 then, and it actually stops a little short of there. It goes to the Marty Pippin addition. That'll be 12-inch again. So once this is all set up, water will be able to get from the south water plant to the water tower. The booster station will draw it out of the water tower and send it east, making interconnection with the high elevation zone of Lamar's. Well, you've heard that before, also referred to as the low pressure zone. And that booster station boosts that pressure up so that irrigation systems and second floor restrooms work. So
Now, all of these areas that the pipe is going in, is it either city-owned or the easements are already in place?
it's the first case.
So the city owns all of, or at
It's
least the
all-
right-of-way?
It's all public right-of-way. Now, we do leave city limits in a number of locations, Delana. And in those cases, it's in county right-of-way, but we've already gone to the county, and I think we're up to about the fourth or fifth permit is already been issued from the county to the city on this project.
So once it starts, everything's in place and
It
work
is.
can proceed, it won't all of a sudden have to stop at some point?
A couple of years ago, we bought the actual land that the
Okay.
water tower is gonna go on, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, shall I open the hearing? Is there any other comments from the public? Are you public?
No, I'm waiting.
Go ahead, make.
Michael Washburn, McClure Engineering Company. I just wanted to take this opportunity to, again, just say how much we appreciate the city's business. And we certainly look forward to getting construction going on the tower and the booster station and this water main project. And I also just wanted to inform the council, our company's furthering our commitment and interest in this region by opening a new office in Sioux City. And so I'll be working out of that office, it'll be a lot nicer having a 30-minute drive versus a 2-hour drive from Fort Dodge. So we're excited to be closer to you, and we'll be having an open house in our new office 1st of April, so you can be looking for invitations to that in the mail. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for all your help. Any other comments from the public? Hearing none, I'll declare the hearing closed.
Scott, one question. What kind of increase are we talking about in pressure into the low pressure area? Is it a significant amount or?
Well, this will just maintain the pressure that we've been doing with the booster station on 12th Street.
Okay.
That's the other little component here. Once all this is operational, the booster station on 12th Street will be discontinued.
So basically, it's to maintain our existing.
It is.
pressures?
Without a booster station, though, the high elevation zone would struggle to go above 40 PSI probably. And even in some of the reaches, like the cul-de-sac at 16th and the cul-de-sac at 17th, parts of 18th Street, they would struggle to maybe hit 30 PSI. And to make things work properly, second stories and irrigation systems, like I mentioned, you really need to maintain 60 PSI and above. Many areas of Lamar's, we've got 90 to 100 PSI. So this is just really to get that high elevation zone so it's got adequate pressures.
You mentioned Marty Pipp's addition. That's already city water, but this would just complete a loop, or at least be an arm of finishing a loop up there, is that right?
It would complete the loop and it would interconnect Marty Pippett's addition directly with this new location
Okay.
of the booster, but now the water will feed the other direction, quite frankly.
Motion adopting resolution 14-4 to adopt plan specifications, forms, contract, estimates, of cost, water system improvements 2012, water main extension.
Second?
I got a motion and a second. Any other questions? Bev, can you call the roll?
Nelson?
Yes.
Stuckey?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Goodchild?
Yes.
Reckner?
Yes.
We go to the general discussion. Citizens' comments. Thumbs up board. John?
Nothing.
Clark? Donna?
Nothing for me, thank you.
And we'll go right on to the consent items. All these will be passed with one motion, unless there's some separate discussion need to take place. Approval of the regular minute meeting of February 4th, list of bills for Valentine's Day, monthly financial statement for January, Convention and Visitors Bureau Advisory Board recommendation, establishing shift pay for AEMT. The only comment I want to make is on the Convention and Visitors Bureau recommendation. We did have a meeting. Took us a couple hours. Everybody on the committee attended. Everybody voiced their opinions. And we have a really good bunch of volunteers and committee members on that group. But this is just to establish the fact that the paper and the radio can present this recommendation, and we'll vote on it at the next meeting.
Motion to approve consent items 1 through 5.
Second.
One question?
Yes.
Regarding D5, the AEMT, is that going to have any impact on the budget for 15?
It will impact the expenditure side, but we should also be able to reimburse that with additional revenue.
All right.
I've got a couple questions on the list of projects from the Convention Visitors Bureau.
Yep.
And these are probably going to end up being more just for my information more than anything, but the cover letter states that Bill has estimated, projected a little over $100,000 in dollars, and they set $80,000 aside for the Lamar's Convention Center and Visitors Bureau Center.
Yep.
Then we go back to the list, and that very entity is again asking for $8,000. So I kind of struggle with letting them be on the list if they're getting the lion's share out front. Once again, like I say, it's a question. That's the first one. The second question I have is, this National Traditional Country Music Association brings a whole lot of people to this community for 7 to 10 days.
Yep.
And I kind of think we might be being a bit stingy there. And then the last comment I have is, what exactly do we give the Plymouth County Fair for $6,000 for?
Well, let's address them one at a time. Country Music Festival, some of the $80,000 also goes to them.
Okay?
When it's advertising, it's not in the list of items 1 through 15. Items 1 through 15 are for items. Advertising is part of the $80,000 budget, on top of Jessica's salary, on top of trying to run the little office that's now over there. So that's what the 80 is used for.
Okay.
I think they got around $5,000 of co-op advertising last year, on top of the money that they have listed here. The Plymouth County Fair, this is for separate brochures that we have not paid for in advertising before, but they wanted brochures that listed us as a contributor, and those brochures and those items go to all the groups, all the clubs, all the agencies. It's the list of events and when they occur, and we typically give to the fair because the fair puts a lot of heads in beds. The hotels are all sold out already. They're sold out in, I think, Orange City already for the Plymouth County Fair, so that's why we do that. The reason why the Convention and Business Bureau asked for money for the two things, I can't remember what.
One's grandstand or new
New stands for the lower level of the convention center is that's a thing, again. So Jessica's not supposed to use her money, that's supposed to be for advertising for things. So really, it could be the city of Lamar's asking for it, but again, the two items was just for items that we thought would enhance the Convention and Business Bureau, and we've been typically doing some enhancements on those, which again, brings people to town.
Okay.
Puts heads in beds.
Okay.
All three of those items, I can tell you probably had a good 30-minute discussion apiece among the 6-8 committee members, and realized that I'm the only one from the council on the committee. Jessica's a non-voting member, so she didn't even get to vote to do this. And then we have 6 other members from the community, and so I think it's kind of a well-rounded thing. When you look at the total dollars being spent, Jessica would be here, but she decided to take vacation this week so that I could tell you this, is that the ideas are to find the projects that bring the most people from out of town into town, so those money get replenished to the hotel motel fund, so then they can be used again. And if you look at the fair, you look at the Convention Business Bureau, and you look at like the Country Music Festival, and even some of the other ones that, the Lamar's Chamber of Commerce for ice cream days, those are the ones that bring the most people to town.
You bet.
And that's what we're trying to support.
All right.
Okay?
Just to follow up on that, I guess my only question would be if we're estimating 100,000 and spending 35,000 with an allocation out of that of 80,000, I'm not getting that to add up.
Normally we'll get in about 110 to 115,000.
Okay.
Just to be conservative, we estimate 100, plus there is some fund balance there that they haven't
Okay,
used
so
in past
there is
years.
some balance, okay.
And she's been very lucky that the last couple of years, I think it's been around 15,000 in grants, that she's been able to work
Yeah.
to supplement her advertising budget. So that's the ideas on these kind of items. It's been kind of skewed to the last couple of years to trying to get it so that people will replenish the fund with whatever we're doing. One of the premier events that's a relatively new item is the Frosty Cross that's getting a pretty good donation too. And they bring people from Minneapolis and Omaha and stay overnight and everything like that. So it's a well-received event in our
I know it
community.
got raving reviews last year, so.
Yeah, so we look at that, everybody on the committee actually knows every one of these with how many people are in town, how long they stay, whether they're in hotels, whether they just buy gas. I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of knowledge. That's what we're trying to do.
Good enough.
And really, right now, like I said, we get this stuff out to the public and we vote on it at the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions about the consent agenda? I'll make them, all those in favor of the consent agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Highway 3 West. On January 22nd, the bids were received for the Highway 3 West Trail project. The bids were attached. Staff recommendation is to award to the low bidder and anticipate a cost reduction change order. DGR is recommending the award is both forthcoming. Has that happened, or?
Yes, I've got it verbally from Brian Wells,
Okay,
and in an email, actually, Rex.
okay. So this is the bridge over on Highway 3 that we've dealt with about a dozen times. Is there any new information you'd like to add to this, Scott?
Well, I'd like to go through, I guess, what DOT has advised us. That really what's before you today is to either reject all the bids or to award to the low. They have numerically and from a reference standpoint, and they run a list of contractors that are on a approved bidders list. So they've done all that kind of contractual checking on these bids, and they are giving us the green light that we can award, and the further recommendation that we should award to the low bidder if you elect to award. It's your choice whether to award the bid or reject. My recommendation, Brian Wells's recommendation, is that you award this to the low bidder, which is Peterson Construction. Any contact, and this comes directly from the Office of Contracts, DOT, any contact with the low bidder or any of the bidders is inappropriate at this point. That's always the case, but they wanted me to state that to you. So we have not, Brian has not done that, the Office of Contracts has not done that, and I have not done it. We have not contacted the contractor. We would like a day to visit with them about their bid and about value engineering, but that has to come after the award has been made to the bidder. So any changes, any cost reduction, as Rex read aloud there, can be done, but it cannot be done until after we make an award. And value engineering is really a two-way conversation and negotiation with a contractor that already has a contract as to are there new, different, better means and methods to carry out this project. And as a result of that, there would be a cost reduction. So you need to award it as is if you elect to do so. Again, our recommendation is to do that and then allow our time with the consultant and myself to negotiate some value engineering with the contractor. I do want to point out that I know this project has been somewhat controversial, at least as far as the total dollars being spent. However, we did open up that west side of the Floyd River long ago, 1992 to be exact. That's when Bob Michael and his investors came to us and wanted the city to support growth on that side of the river. So it's been since 1992. Since that time, we've gotten involved with quality of life issues, as you well know, under CBP and all the rec trails and all the parks and those kind of things. And we feel at this point that really in the best interest of the city, we need to get the west side connected to the east side. So I think it's good for the community, it's good for future development, certainly good for safety, because walking that highway or biking the highway or running on the highway is not an advisable thing. Relieving of any city liability and exposure of liability as a result of not having a walking, biking, pedestrian trail seems appropriate here. We believe that there's all kinds of destinations that folks on the west side would be heading to. Who can predict that really? But the small amount of jog to the south, I know that's been talked about. That's kind of minor compared to all the different destinations that certain people would take. The city working on this project has been quite a bit in the past, and I kind of suspect that might also be included in the future, but to me that's a good thing. The bypass is there, and then now that opened up in 2004, the big part, and a smaller part in 2005. So again, that's kind of another reinforcement that we really view the future to go out towards the west there. A lot has already been done. The engineering is done, the design is done, all the permits have been obtained. That's DNR, DOT, Corps of Engineers, FEMA. The wetland mitigation has been obtained. We also got FHWA approval by giving us the $160,000 of grant. Your public works staff and others assisted in grading the site, and so that is done. We also got the approval from Parkview Terrace, and that's part of their sidewalk program. So I guess with all that, I just want to state that I really strongly encourage an affirmative vote here so that we can move forward with this project.
Tell me a little bit about Peterson. I don't remember using them before.
Peterson Contracting hasn't done a lot of work for the city, but they did do one project, and coincidentally, it falls on the same rec trail. If you go clear south on 195th, where the rec trail goes underneath the bypass, they built that tunnel.
So they didn't do any work on any of the other bridges?
No other bridges and no other stretches of the trail itself, Delana.
And the bridge portion of the bid, that includes getting it into place, all of the crane costs, everything is calculated in there?
100%.
Okay. Couple of questions. With that $160,000 grant, if we were to reject these bids, try and redo the project so it came in at the 205, what's our timetable on that grant? Does it go away? Does it just continue, and then when we rebid, it's still available based on the project, the 80/20 and all of the current guidelines? How does that work?
It is for the current federal fiscal year, which started October 1st of 13,
Okay.
and it's running through September 30th of 14. So as long as this project gets committed from a construction standpoint, during that fiscal year, we have those dollars. If it doesn't get committed, then, again, I've quoted this many a times, I sit on the TAC committee, John sits on the policy, it would have to go back through an approval process to move it to another fiscal year and to really re-up the authorization of it.
And the commitment is the bid letting and getting the bids in and awarding the bid. So that is the portion, not the construction, but up to the point of accepting a bid would need to be completed during that
That is
federal
correct.
fiscal year.
That is correct.
But it's not up to us to do the bid letting. That's the other problem, is we gotta have the state. It's gotta fill under the state guidelines for the bid letting. The state's gotta still do the bidding, even if we reject and want to do it again.
Because it's federal dollars administered by the state, FHWA requires the state DOT to handle the bid openings, like Rex said. So-
And then my other question on it was, I've got the staff recommendation here, and I understand what you're saying about negotiating the value engineering to try and get that, 246 number down to closer to the 205 that we're talking about. But the way that we typically award a bid is it's awarded to a particular or group with the dollar amount that they bid. And so we really have no surety that it's going to be any less. They could say, nope, that's what we bid, you accepted the bid, so we're going to do the whole 246.
And I look at their bid, and it's 44,000 below the next bidder, so I don't see any opportunities for value engineering on their part that they're going to want to reduce their cost. Is where I'm at is, I believe I try to represent as best I can the citizens of this community. By far and away, the people that contacted me either by phone or in person are against the project. I'm still concerned about this project where the bridge has been relocated. I think it's going to be a maintenance issue during flooding. It just has all the handwriting on the wall for that. I'm concerned about additional in-kind costs from the city. Even if somebody uses that bridge to cross to get to the other side of the river, and their intent is to go downtown, I can't believe they're not going to try and come back up on the highway and walk on the shoulder of the road. I don't see it any other way, so. And like I say, when they're $44,000 below the next bid, there's not going to be much room on their part to want to renegotiate.
John, what is your plan, or as far as a location to do this at some future date?
Well, I mean, the project originally started out on the north side.
And you voted for that,
And it didn't work, so
Yeah.
it no longer became a feasible
Yeah.
project, as far as I'm concerned.
in your opinion, yeah?
Right.
I guess I would add that we have very few opportunities to cross that river between Business Highway 75 and all the way down to 195th Street. I cannot believe with the money that has been invested in that corridor, that at some time in the future, we're not going to have some way of getting across that. I don't see another road going across, but at some point in time, as that develops out there, you're going to have a pedestrian crossway. And as much as I hate seeing the cost go up on this thing, I would remind you that when we put up 2 other bridges, I think we ran into some obstacles on that too. But both of those bridges on the recreation trail were paid for by the city 100%. There was no matching funds. Also, same thing is true when we put a bridge at the golf course. The city pays 100% of the cost of that bridge going across there. We do have a grant of $160,000, and I hate to see the opportunity pass by. We have a plan from McClure for the development of that area along the bypass. We paid $50,000 for that. We've got other expenses in that area. We paid $300,000 for the water rights in that territory. Not to mention the millions of dollars that the state paid to put a bypass around there. We have a lot of investment out there. It is a good location for housing in the future because it's all downhill as far as wastewater and public services. As we develop further east and south in our community, we have to concern ourselves with how many lift stations we have to produce to move that waste material the right direction. So I just think for future development, if we don't do it now, when do we do it? And when we do it at that time, will we have an opportunity to have $160,000 paid? I think it's time to continue to move forward on it. I do believe that there'll be traffic on it. I can't imagine kids not going from one ball diamond over to the other ball diamond and back and forth. And I know that the Public Safety Committee has brought forward safety issues on 3rd Avenue and 12th Street several times. Council has looked at it and we haven't moved on it because of safety. Same thing has been true on Central Avenue and 12th Street, a safety issue for kids. And I would remind you that that street is about 32 foot, maybe a little wider, and the cars are moving, if they're legally moving, 20 miles an hour, and we're concerned about safety. Now, when you take on a bridge where people are driving 55 miles an hour, and it's almost half the length of a football field, there's definitely a safety issue on that road. And I'd hate to see us come back to this, haunt us someday if somebody's had a very serious accident. We're going to have liability out there because we turned down the one opportunity we had to get a bridge across there and get people back and forth safely.
We also have fiscal responsibility. I look at, we're already 20% over the estimate, and this will not be all the costs that are involved with this project, so.
I don't think there's too many projects, John, in the last few years that we've done. Putting a tunnel underneath there, we ran into budget increases on that, and we went ahead and did it. And I realize that was paid for out of the CBP, but it was still public funds that we used, and I don't think it's unusual for the cost to run higher.
I guess I got a couple questions because I'm obviously the new vote if everything would stand, but I was pretty much in favor of this until it jumped way up above the projected the engineer's projections. If it's really a safety issue, then I have a question for somebody to answer. When I come in at K49, I got to go 25 miles an hour a mile out of town, from a mile out of town. When I come in from the golf course, I've got to go 35 miles an hour from a mile out of town. Why am I going 50 miles an hour at Jerome Dreckman's already, past ball fields, past entrances to trailer parks, and we're worried about safety? The Iowa DOT has, if I'm not mistaken, on a Phase 1 snow, they've got 24 or 36 hours to get all the snow off of that bridge on a Phase 1 snow. That means that there's 10 foot on both sides of both lanes of that bridge, and I don't want anybody to get hurt, but we talk about people getting hurt or the liability we have. The last people that got killed walking on Highway 3 were nowhere near that bridge. They were out on Highway 3, but they chose to be up next to the road, and they got hit. But if we're really concerned about safety, let's slow the traffic down. Sorry,
You, as a council, do not have control of the speed of Highway 3.
But can we not petition the DOT to reduce speeds?
You can ask for a study, but it's purely based by the DOT on that study. So you don't have a vote on it. You can
Okay.
request,
Okay.
and we have on Highway 75, but we've never requested it on Highway 3. Although I will say, when DGR did the improvements from, Highway 75 out to the bypass a couple years back, we asked the DOT to review it at that time. They did, and it's posted the way the study showed it to be posted.
Just to go back to what I kind of started regarding awarding the amount for the actual bid price of $246. Is it possible to award a bid to the low bidder, but cost not to exceed $210,000, which then gives you a cap on your value engineering?
No, he said you have to accept him as it is.
Because of federal.
Okay. Because, I'm,
But then
Like-
what we got to do is we got to place faith and trust in our administrative people and DGR to find ways to reduce it. Because that's just what the federal, when you're asking about the value engineering, if it was a city bid, we would do that. If it was even city with county, we can do that. We can't do it because it's a federal money's going through the state of Iowa.
To give you an example, Delana, I think you were there on the council. I mean, when we did the snow removal building for the airport, and that too had federal money. It was FAA instead of FHWA. And those bids came in higher, if you recall. And we awarded it based on the bids. So we followed that same federal procedure. And then we did the value engineering afterwards. And so it went from just short of 230 to 187, I want to say. So what John is saying, there is a lot left on the table between the low and the second low. On the other hand, look at the spread between 5. Look at the spread between the 5 bidders.
well, I mean, as you know, I was for this, like John, when it was supposed to be on the north side. Then when all the government entities got involved, forced us to reconsider on the south side, the engineering costs kept increasing. Everything that has transpired since then, I've been against it. Now, I did, request at several meetings that people call me, and so when they called, I asked questions as far as, instead of just letting them say, I think it's a bad idea, I think it's a good idea. I asked them questions. I've had literally 50-50 for and against, but I get 70% in favor if we stay within 45 to 50,000 out of pocket from the city. So, a little leeway on the original bid, but not 40,000 over. Then I'm up to 70%. Even those that are against it can go for it if it's within that, 40 to 50,000 extra spent by the city. There's only 30% that are for it regardless of the cost. So, and that's where my hesitation, I mean, yeah, I understand that the, having to trust staff and engineering, and I don't know if that would mean additional costs to DGR. I mean, I'm already tired of paying them. So I don't want additional costs to go into engineering than to try and get some of the actual construction costs down. That makes no sense. So, with a $40,000 gap there between the low bid and the estimate, I don't know how, do you think you can realistically get it down 35 to 40,000? Realistically?
Because the DOT is telling me I can't get to those kind of specifics.
I think we can say that he would like to get to those numbers. I think we would have a 5-0 vote that we hate the government regulation that's been involved in this project. We hate the wetlands. We hate the movement of the bridge. We hate the additional engineering cost. We hate the fact that it's going to be double-sided with yellow tape all over it. I don't know. It's just a bunch of crap in this whole process But the end result is that the only way that we can award it right now is award to the low and let staff do their best. I know that's putting a lot of faith, and right now, we probably don't have much faith in the government system because we've been dealing with this for over a year. But we've got to either have some faith in the government system or we got to reject.
I'd make a motion to reject all bids and petition the DOT to perform a additional speed study for the Highway 3 West going out of town.
I have a motion, and do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, do we have any other discussion on that? Let's have a roll call on that, just to be sure.
Nelson,
No.
Knapp,
No.
Erke,
Yes.
Recklinko,
Yes.
good job.
Yes.
Okay, we reject the bid and ask for a speed study. But we're going for another bid, right? Well, we have another bid. You said to go for another
If you can
bid?
get another bid, I mean, regardless of how I feel, I'm elected. If 70% of the people that are contacting me are saying that they would do it for,
So we're asking for another bid.
Can I ask a question here? Maybe this is just absolutely stupid, but can we go back to the north side and raise it up?
No.
Even if it was higher costs?
No.
No.
they can.
I'd be so for this if it was on the north side.
I'd beg for the council's reconsideration of that vote. Please. To me, you're sending a wrong message as far as development, wrong message as far as safety, a wrong message to the federal government regarding grant funds, a wrong message to contractors that bid this legitimately. It's wrong on so many levels. I would ask for your reconsideration, please.
Well, what happens right now is if we rejected the bids, that it could be rebid, but only be rebid if the DOT allows it to be rebid on their schedule, and we get it awarded before the fiscal year end. The second thing about the speed study is the speed study can be asked for, but they don't have to perform because they've performed in the last few years. But they can perform, but that doesn't mean it'll lower it. But that's okay, we can ask for it. I think we should ask for it because I think traffic is going faster there than it needs to be. My concern with rejecting is similar to Scott's, is if we reject, that doesn't give us any leeway with trying to win and use the 160. We then hope for somebody to come in much lower when and if it gets on the bid. And I'd rather place faith in my administrative staff and engineers that know exactly how we feel on this thing. They know exactly where we're sitting. They know exactly that we're not going to spend more than the 2.5 to 2.10 proposition, so they know exactly what they got to shoot for because they've heard it every 2 weeks for the past year. So,
My disappointment is that we voted on an issue to deconstruct the bridge. We didn't vote on whether we wanted it, we voted that we wouldn't accept the bids, and that's disappointing to me. I would have liked to have seen the motion made as it was in our council packet, so that we were actually voting on the bridge and not these side shows that go on. It's extremely disappointing. I'm a big boy, I can take it, but I really think, as Scott does, I think it's a mistake on the council's part. You're never going to get that $160,000 back. And we've already invested engineering costs, we've already invested our mitigation costs. It's just poor economics. We built 2 other bridges and paid 100% of it. We were going to get $160,000, which is a good deal as far as the city's concerned, for the cost of putting a bridge across there.
I think I had to let the thing be voted on the way it was written, but I also don't know if, we're just Are we rejecting and not wanting to pursue other bids? Are we rejecting because they're too high? Or are we just rejecting because we don't like the project?
Personally, I'm rejecting because they're too high,
Okay.
based on public input that I had.
Okay.
Personally, that's where I'm at, and I've been there for 4 months, because I've been following this one. I've had more calls on this than any other issue that since I've been here. And like I said, if we would have been at that $200,000 mark, I would have been for it. I am for a bridge.
But you understand that we can't have city staff or DGR give us that assurance?
Absolutely,
when we're voting
100%,
on
but you
this?
gotta draw your line in the sand somewhere.
Okay.
I mean, if it would have been another 5,000 higher, where do you draw your line in the sand? You gotta draw a line in the sand.
But you also have to have faith in your city administration, and I have that faith. I know that Scott would work hard on getting those costs down, and I think it's a shame to not give him that opportunity.
I don't deny that one bit, but I will say this much, that John's got a very, very, very good point, and that is, you look at these bids, the next one is 50,000. That tells me they don't have a lot of pencil sharpening room, as far as I'm concerned. So,
I'm not talking about the bidders reducing and having a lower cost. I'm saying have confidence in our city staff, as Scott has done in the past, with quality engineering, working this down. I know the project could get done and be closer to the 200,000 than the 240,000. I have that faith in Scott, and I think it's a shame if some of the other council people don't. I'm a big boy, I can take it, but I really don't care for the way this was handled.
If we're not gonna take a new vote, then the point of clarification that Rex brought up is definitely warranted. I need direction from the council, just what Rex stated. Is this project dead, or is this bid opening dead, and you want to go and redesign and go out for a new bid?
I have a concern with the level of the bids and the location of the bridge. Those have been my problem since the bridge moved.
But we can't change the location, but you can change the level of the bids, potentially.
Joe, can I make a motion that is published in our agenda? Or because of John's motion, can I not make that
You
motion?
can make a motion to reconsider, and then you vote on that, and then you can vote, or then you can make another motion according to the one that's in the program.
Let's continue with Scott's thought first, just for a second, if you
All right.
bear with me. Scott's saying, is the council's intention to rebid it and try to get it done in the federal fiscal year? Is that the council's intent, or is that not the council's intent?
If we have the ability to rebid, I understand the subject to DOT, all of that, but if we can rebid,
We have.
get the bids in.
We have the ability to rebid, it's just whether, like Scott said, whether we're really voting to deny the project or just deny these bids.
I myself am 100% on rebidding.
Okay.
In favor of looking at it again, because I've already let my skunk out of the bag, and that is, if it was in that $200,000 range, I would be for it. There's too much that's been spent, too much energy. I agree, it's a safety thing. I agree with all the arguments on both sides of this. But you have to draw your line in the sand when it comes to dollars, and we're not talking 4,000 over, we're talking 45,000 over. And that's where I drew my line. So if it means reopening up, get new bids, great, let's go for it. And we can leave it on the south side.
So really what we should do, and you tell me if I'm wrong, we should reconsider and reject these bids and then ask for new bids.
I think that's probably what you have to do.
That would be a better approach if that's what we want to do.
We can't just make a motion to rebid.
Well,
So we have
because-
two motions on
well,
this
because-
to request a rebid.
I don't think we made a motion to reject all bids, did we?
Yeah, we
Did it
made a
say
motion
all?
to reject all bids.
He did.
And look at a speed study, so it doesn't indicate anything
There
about.
was a motion to reject, so that's done.
Right. So can we make a second motion to request a rebid from,
I think you can direct
or that's just,
administration to look at that. I don't know that you can, to rebid it, if you don't change it, I don't see what's going to change.
DOT will not allow a rebid unless the project changes.
But
So you're right on target.
that's what I'm
So
saying.
what you gotta do to change, you gotta change something material in the project to justify a rebid.
The bridge will be 5 feet wide instead of 10 feet or whatever, things like that.
You need some component of the project that needs to change.
How wide is the bridge?
You can't change the width or length of the bridge. That,
Okay, I was just-
what we have spent conservative 3 years studying, restudying, reapplying for permits through the Corps and FEMA and DNR is the size, location, size, height, width, length. For all intents and purposes, the entire bridge has to stay as is. The flexibility would be to change the project outside of the bridge location. So you would have to mess with the length and width and so forth of the trail itself.
I would make a motion to reconsider. I don't know how I need to state what I'm reconsidering, but reconsidering the options, reconsidering the trail bridge. What do I, is
You're
it-
reconsidering the rejection of the bid.
yes, correct.
And I'll second it.
now are we doing that so that we can instruct to,
We're doing that so I can make the motion that was on the agenda.
So what we're trying to figure out, I think everybody's trying to figure out is how we're gonna win on this deal. And it's government, so I'm not sure we're gonna win. But what we've gotta figure out is how we can keep the 160,000, get the cost closer to the 200,000 so people can accept that and get the project done. And do that in the most efficient manner. Now, Scott didn't mention it, but I'll mention it because I didn't deal with the contractor. If we shorten down the length of the concrete that's outside the bridge, the cost is going to be cheaper. That's trail concrete that we can shorten. We cannot make it go all the way that we thought we were going to make it. We can make it be less wide, less deep, whatever, because we can do that just like we've done on other parts of the trail. I think we did it at this length and this distance to make it be connecting with a lot of different places, because we're going to spend that money on the trail outside of the bridge anyway. What he's saying, though, is he can't sit there and have the contractor change probably the price or any of the parameters on the bridge, because we've only got about 6 government agencies involved in that damn bridge. Probably get in trouble for that, but
What you're doing, if you reconsider this, you're going to reconsider the bids as they were let out.
Right.
With all the details, because that's what all,
That's what we-
5 of them? 1, 2, 3,
That's what we
4,
have-
5. That's what all 5 bid them.
right,
and that's what we have to accept or reject to have the contract that's been approved by all these agencies. After we accept or approve that contract, we're not going to be able to change where the bridge is or the distance or the length or the height or any of those kind of things. And I'm not an engineer, so I can say that. But we can change some of those parameters outside the bridge that still has some concrete and other things that would get the cost closer to this. I know I've been sitting there for a long time, but it's abundantly clear to me, and I think abundantly clear to the staff, and especially clear to DGR, that they need to get it to 200,000, 205. That's what we're going to spend. That's all we're going to spend. That's all we've been wanting to spend for the last 18 months. But I think our best chance of getting that done is giving these guys the chance to do it.
okay, so if DOT won't let us rebid the project as it is. You know, they would require us, say, to cut the yardage in half on the concrete in order to bring it in, right? You see what I'm saying?
Outside the bridge.
Yeah, outside of the bridge. The bridge
Yep.
is a given.
Yep.
That's,
Yep.
bridge is off the table.
Yep.
So they would require us to make a change. On the flip side of that, will they allow us to accept this bid and then go back to the contractor and say, oh, by the way, half of that yardage is out? We aren't going to pay you for half of that distance that we talked about because, you know, even though we accepted your bid, we only want to pay X amount. Is that allowed? If you can't do the one, why can you do the other?
It's a unit price job.
Right.
So if there's less unit prices in the job, there's gonna be less cost.
But after you've accepted the bid, you
Yeah.
can change the
We-
units?
We've done that on Barkley, when they were in town doing the asphalt overlays, we increased the units. It seems odd.
I mean, but you see what I'm asking?
You tell me if I'm wrong. I mean,
Well, part of the problem is,
I'm on very dangerous
I
ground.
know.
yeah, he can't
As an
tell
engineer,
you.
my code of ethics is at stake. I will respond to Delena's comment like this. I'll repeat what I said. If we would award it based on the bids received, we can legally do value engineering on this
Scott is
project.
hand tied to what he can say at a public meeting.
FHWA and DOT made it abundantly clear that any discussion of changing the project at this stage would be inappropriate.
So discussion is inappropriate, but changing the project not necessarily.
This is government, Delana. This is government. This doesn't make any sense.
Joe's about ready to throw something at me over
It doesn't-
here.
you know, and that's what makes this project very difficult, but also makes explaining it to the public very difficult, and also makes our vote very difficult, because at this point,
Can I reinforce
Yeah.
that? This procedure is as cumbersome as the procedure by which you were asked to do the wetland mitigation.
And we know how we felt about that.
I know exactly how you felt about that. That's why
Well-
I didn't know this.
well, we'll even go to a further one. We'll go to the one out on 24th Street where we wanted to award it to the low bidder, and we had to award it to the second low bidder until the state figured out that the low bidder was actually okay, after a lawsuit was threatened. So we have a lot of these things that we have in our background and belly, and yes, we're, if we vote yes to give it to Peterson, we're voting yes with the idea that there's going to be this value engineering performed, and if we vote no, then we leave it back to the DOT and us to contract some of the project so that we get a lower bid, and whether that can happen or not and protect our 160 is not a surety. And I can say those things because I'm not an engineer, right? So far, I'm not getting in trouble. Well, I haven't said we're doing it, I just said that's what we're looking at, right?
One other example, in the 90s, I think Rex, you might have been the only one on the council at the time, but we had a grant to pave 14th Avenue East. That's from where Jerry Reardon lives down to 12th. We had a grant. And I recommended to the council that we tell the FHWA, same agency, that keep your money. We could do it cheaper locally. That is not the case here. That was the case, and I made that recommendation. I wouldn't be bringing this forward even with the extra cost. It's still cost-effective for you, as the representatives of Lamar's, to do this project under this grant. It's more cost-effective to do that than do it all local. The only way you would want to not award this, in my opinion, given the fact that we've got $160,000 of grant, is if you don't want to do the project at all. If you don't want to do the project, vote it down and be done with it. I don't recommend that, I don't condone that. We went after the monies, we got the monies. It's still cost effective, even with all the federal rules, that go along with it, to do this project under this bid. I really believe that.
Did we have a vote on the motion to,
No, we haven't
No,
yet.
We haven't figured the motion out
You
yet.
called the question?
yes?
Okay. We called the question. What we're voting on now is a motion to reconsider the rejection of the bids. That's what the roll call is going to be.
And a yes vote says what?
A yes vote means that we will reconsider the bids. A no vote means that the project will not go forward. Has anybody got any questions? Anybody watching on TV? This is not easy stuff, okay?
I thought you were going to ask them for opinions.
It's not easy. These poor guys got to write about it and tell about it on the radio. Go ahead, Bev. Ask the people.
Rexwinkle,
No.
Goodchild,
No.
Erky,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes,
Knapp.
Yes,
Now, simply because our whole discussion is we're reconsidering.
that's right.
So it's kind of pointless.
now I would like to make a motion
Figure,
adopting Resolution 14-5 awarding the contract for the Iowa Highway 3 West Trail STPE project to Peterson Contractors in the amount of $246,153.21, subject to DOT concurrence.
Okay, I'll make a second so we can continue. We're making a motion to award the contract to Peterson. That award comes with the staff recommendation in your council package that the staff is recommending award to the low bidder and anticipating a cost reduction change order. Our engineers are recommending awarding of the contract. And obviously, city staff is recommending it.
but negotiating value engineering was not part of the motion.
I don't think it can be part of this motion. I think that's what we got to
Yeah,
direct him to do.
that's where we're hand-tied.
It can't.
I think we got to accept this, and then we can say, we could say if we wanted
You
to,
can direct, but you can't guarantee.
Yeah.
but I don't think we can say in the motion to do that, because that then,
Somewhere you have to have faith in your city staff.
okay, have we need any more discussion?
Okay, the 205 to 210 that I've got 70% support for from those that have contacted me. The, a little leeway on the estimate. If this motion goes through as planned, that 70% of the constituents can count on every effort, 110% effort being made to get the number down to what they're willing to pay.
That's what his
To the
effort.
205 to 210.
That's what his efforts will be. That's what he understands. I
I'd
guess
call the
I'm
question.
just, I think Scott understands, and he's hogtied because,
Because he can't say anything. I know it.
but the reality is that that's basically cutting about 10% off the contract to get down to your range. Okay, Bev, we're going to call it one more time.
Goodchild,
No.
Erky,
Yes.
Rexwinkle,
No.
Nelson,
Yes,
Knapp.
Yes.
Please, please, please.
Okay, and we're going to have faith and like follow-up reports, Scott. Okay? Fair enough?
It's things like this that really make me just like shut up.
This is, if anybody out there thinks it's easy, it's not easy. Okay, we're going to move on to the proposed budget. The proposed budget. Bill, you want to just tell us what we're doing here?
Sure. At the last meeting, we were about $81,000 short of having a balanced budget. At that meeting, we were directed to move $70,000 worth of expense to help purchase the street sweeper, to move that from Public Works Streets to the solid waste fund, which was going to be paying for 1/3 of it already. We were also directed to then move the additional shortfall to fund balance, general fund balance. What you have in front of you does make those changes. It does leave us with a balanced budget. The page that was distributed prior to this meeting with the yellow highlighting on it, there was a $205 mistake, so there is a $205 change is what amounts to that. Plus it shows what the hospital budget was. And again, you had those numbers in your packet before, but they weren't shown on this summary sheet. Since that time, we have taken a look at the stormwater drainage fund, which was brought up at the meeting that possibly we could fund part of the street sweeper from that. We do have adequate balance there if council would elect to do that. We do have $143,000 there, so we could take $70,000 from there instead of the solid waste fund. Would have no impact on this budget. It would just change those two line items, which are both enterprise funds. So if you opt to do that, that does not change your numbers of what you're approving today. I guess I would, we've kind of been through it over the last 6 weeks. We've gone through all the detail. I'd be glad to try and address any specific questions. Otherwise, I'll just leave it at that, and we can discuss it from there.
Sioux City Council's in the paper today at $16.75 versus $13.50, and they're only $2.7 million short at $16.75, so good luck to them.
Wouldn't it be wise to take that money out of that storm sewer fund, Bill?
I think it'd be very appropriate. I think it would leave your solid waste fund with an adequate balance and maybe allocate the cost to where more effectively it should be allocated,
Right.
as long as the funds are there.
I'd be in favor of that.
I definitely think that's the more appropriate place to take those
Usage.
funds.
Right.
Yep.
And you're still funding 1/3 of it from the solid waste fund, 1/3 from stormwater, and then 1/3 from road use, so.
Clark, were you making a motion on that?
But it was more of a question at this point, but
I don't think it really has to be a motion.
Doesn't have to be a motion.
As long
Doesn't
as we
have to
just
be a
say it's
motion.
gonna happen, it's gonna
Yeah.
happen.
Okay.
You're just switching the columns, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because as far as the budget, we're just approving the levy and,
We're approving the,
Yes.
no, we're gonna have the hearing.
oh,
For-
yeah, set
for
the
the-
hearing to approve the levy and the
Yeah.
budget.
That does bring up a question I have. Push record when I say that, these questions I keep having, but on these more important public hearings, and I don't want to take away from, should they be held at a different hour? The reason I ask that is because I know with the EPA, that's the most recent one that's coming to mind, we had a fair amount of citizens show up. And I'm 100% in favor of leaving the council meetings at noon on Tuesdays, but when it comes to a budget hearing where I think there are people who may want to come forth and visit, post comments, would it be wise to move those hearings to a early evening time? And I'm gonna ask that twice today, because we got ordinances coming up too. And that's one that, I think people are working, so it's just a comment, question.
You're just saying maybe set the first of the 3 hearings.
Absolutely.
Or-
Yes.
I guess we have 1 hearing, but then 3 readings.
The idea with having the night meeting for the budget workshop is that people can attend that when we go through and discuss those items, so that's what we do that on. I would suggest that if we changed the levy, or had an increase or a decrease, that then there is something to probably be gained from it. When we're gonna leave it the same, I'm not sure there's much to be gained.
Okay.
That's just an observation.
Okay.
But yet, there is, it's interesting, you say that people sometimes don't show up. When we decided that people couldn't park trailers certain places on their house, we got people here for 4 meetings in a row or something like that, a full house at noon. So, and we got comments written on top of it. And we accept all written comments for any hearing, and any written comments will get read at the hearing. So they can do it different ways, But we're not changing this levy. The levy is the same as it's been. The taxes are the same. We actually got it to the same point. So that's why I don't think it's necessary this time.
Okay.
Ordinances, maybe we'll look at that differently when we get to that point.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll make a motion accepting the proposed 2014-15 annual budget and mill levy of $13.50 and establishing March 4th, 2014 at 12 p.m. as date and time for public hearing and adoption of the fiscal year 2014-15 budget.
Second.
Okay, roll call, right?
No.
No roll call. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now we're going to do rail operations. The rail committee has evaluated options for 12 months on a variety of issues. Staff recommendations is the rail committee concluded on February 13th to recommend the council approve selecting Burlington Junction as the short line terminal switching railroad subject to negotiation with CN and Surface Transportation Board as necessary to finalize a contract with Burlington Junction. Once negotiated, the contract will be brought back to council for final approval.
Explanation, please.
Yeah, maybe somebody needs an overview here.
It would be difficult and strictly an estimate on the committee's part to negotiate directly with Burlington Junction now without first having negotiated with CN, which is the Class 1 railroad that goes through town. They're the ones that own it, I should say. UP, because of a 120-year-ago agreement, they operate the majority of the trains on that track, but CN is the underlying real estate owner. So number one, we've got to negotiate with them because they own that track and they can pretty much dictate how business is conducted on that track. And it's that main line that services our industrial track. Secondly, when the city found themselves as the owner of the industrial track, we signed an agreement with CN. We were young in terms of ownership of the rail. We had Wells Dairy wanting to bring in sugar. So we signed an agreement that was befitting of the then day to get rail service into our industrial park. So the reason negotiations with CN is because they own the main line, and secondly, and just as importantly, we signed an agreement with them when we first became the owners, if you will, of the tracks. Secondly, we need to negotiate with the Surface Transportation Board. They're in Washington, D.C. They are the entity that rules on common carrier status, on who operates and how it gets operated for the various tracks across the country, both Class 1 and every other class underneath Class 1. So as much as we discussed FHWA on the last subject, Surface Transportation Board is the federal agency that deals with rail. So we need to negotiate both of them in order to determine how we fill out a fairly standard agreement. We have a copy of which, the committee had it, of an agreement that Burlington Junction would have with us, or the other party we interviewed is Progressive Rail, and they would have a similar agreement that they would like to propose. But we don't know how to fill it out until we first negotiate with these two other entities as to what's going to be accepted and what's not going to be accepted. A little bit of that equation is what's called embedded switching fees. And the word embedded is simply when somebody contracts with the rail to deliver whatever, they get by tariff, a Class 1 railroad, CN is no different, or UP, they have to quote a certain a certain fee that is part of the tariff they got approved by the Surface Transportation Board. So it's no different than like when John was with Mid-American Energy, they can't quote one customer one thing and another customer another thing. Same thing with the rail. Rail has to quote based on tariffs. And so what ends up happening is we need to negotiate how much of the fee that is being quoted to IML or Wells or whoever, Lamar's Public Storage, how much of that fee has got the embedded switching in it, so that we know what to put in our agreement with Burlington Junction. So it gets fairly complicated fairly quickly. The committee did meet several times with Burlington Junction. We did a trip to Rochelle, Illinois, to do a reference check on Burlington Junction. We have met now twice with Progressive, and we had Progressive submit answers to some questions we had that our consultant Bill Hooton prepared for us. And the committee met last Thursday and concluded unanimously, with only one party missing, that we need to recommend to the council to continue with Burlington Junction. Burlington Junction gave a little bit of a caveat in that, like everything in life, without a written contract, it's a little iffy. They, however, are willing to negotiate with both parties, CN as well as the Surface Transportation Board, as part of their commitment to the city that they want our business without a signed contract.
So is there like general fund type cost to the city, or is Burlington Junction paid based on that embedded switching fee, like an as-use fee for service type deal?
As stated.
The
Nothing to our general fund.
Nothing to general. So the costs for Burlington Junction are paid by rail usage?
Correct.
I actually was gonna ask the same question. Is there any way to project like a 5-year, 10-year income thing on this? And is this gonna be an enterprise fund or a general fund item?
Very good question. We think it needs to be an enterprise fund, so that it has expenditures and revenues all within that, based on definition of an enterprise fund, it has to be self-sustaining. So that we can, even on a more global statement, say to Delena's question, no general funds now or in the future. We want it to be self-sustaining. No different than our wastewater, our water, our golf, solid waste. So right now, we operate 4 enterprise funds, and we would, in the future, not today, but in the future, propose to you to set the rail up the same way.
Two more questions. Thank you for that. Do we have to own equipment? I mean, will we own an engine? Will we own moving equipment within our rail spur, or how does that work?
No, under this proposition, with either of the two parties, Progressive or Burlington Junction, we are saying to you, the public, as well as them, we're not an expert when it comes to rail, and we don't want to be.
Okay.
We want to be the owner so that we can control our own destiny and make sure that the growth of our industries happen with the proper services provided. However, we don't want to become educated in it. We think that we can hire somebody to do it cheaper than what we can do it internal.
Okay.
So any power on the ground, and there will be power, would be provided by Burlington Junction. Any labor, manpower costs,
It's theirs.
that would all be on them, totally at their expense.
Okay.
And there would be boots on the ground. And I guess we weren't told that that had to be confidential. They're estimating 3. There'd be 3 employees in Lamar's to control this rail.
I'm 100% for this whole idea. So just, I want to be clear on that. I'm really excited about it, actually. The only fear that I have is, and I'm going to rewind now back to the bridge, you know, you have to take these steps so far to look into something. At the risk of, when you get to the end, you're saying, hey, wait a minute, I don't like it. Well, we just talked about the bridge over the river, and, you know, I understand you might tick some people off at the end saying, wait a minute, this is too much. But that's my fear, is taking those steps, getting in to find out what it is you're looking at, you know, but, so.
What's the contract period?
That is something that needs to be negotiated. They were proposing 5-year increments ultimately. Initially, if the council is not comfortable with that, and that would be another recommendation from the committee, but if you're not, Burlington Junction has indicated to us that they would do a lesser term, initial term, in the hopes of gaining a longer term loan. And almost similar to the telecommunication providers on our water tower, they too wanted longer term commitments just because of the first cost involved. And so we went with 4 quasi-automatic renewals of a 5-year term each with the telecoms. So, you know, they essentially have 20, 25 years. It's in 5-year increments, but they can automatically renew it. It'd be something on that order eventually with somebody like Burlington.
One of the comments I'd like to make as a committee member is one of the reasons we went to a short line rail system is that right now CN pushes these big diesels in. And you were all here when we built that rail all the way out to 27th Street, and we can't use that section because they won't push cars in, they want to pull them in. We got to leave room for those 2 big diesels. Now, once we get a short line rail and an agreement, their units will be smaller. They can pull, push, whatever they want to do. We're not under a CNN regulations. And we find out that the federal regs are a lot easier to work with than CNN's rules and governing. And one thing you should be aware of, and I think CNN will be happy to see a short line rail. I think that negotiation will go well because they won't be sitting here plugging up their main line doing the switching. They'll push them in there and go. And that will free up their main line. And they're not making any money pushing those cars in now. They're costing too much. So,
Will there be any additional costs in going across the streets that are out there? I'm just curious if it, because you're kind of talking more traffic now. I mean, rail traffic, and like right there by Vans, that's kind of an unguarded you know, I'm just spitballing here, but there's a couple intersections out there that are.
Yeah, initially, no, because of Ken's comments. The Surface Transportation Board has a set of rules, and believe it or not, as Ken pointed out to you, those rules are not quite as restrictive as what CN puts out. You got to realize that the power that would be placed in the Mars would be substantially less than the power it takes for CN to pull their Class 1 railroad through town, or UP for that matter. And so it's those big locomotives that carry a heavy cost. The power that would be here would be more commensurate with what you see parked down at Hinton, at the elevator.
Right.
Those red ones?
Floyd Valley.
Yeah. They're a much smaller power unit and don't carry the weight, don't carry the power. It's not going to cost as much. And they can do things slower and more methodically without tying up the main line. So the answer to your question, it could come to pass that the city needs better lights, better gates at some of our roadways. But then again, Burlington Junction really feel that what we've got is atypical in any town USA. And they don't feel that's going to be needed anytime in the short term.
Motion approving the rail committee's recommendation to select Burlington Junction as short line terminal switching railroad, subject to final negotiations.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now we're going to the Code of Ordinance changes. There are a number of Code of Ordinance changes that city staff is starting to propose and make. The process of changing the Code of Ordinance is you got to have a public hearing. That public hearing is going to be a month from now, 1 month. Then it's got to go through ordinances, which has 3 readings, which can take 3 different meetings to have. So you're going to have about 2 months to deal with this. But I think somebody ought to get the camera on Jason, because he's going to sit up there and talk for a little while.
I might be here longer.
And explain all the stuff, so that everybody knows what we're doing.
Rex, I've also asked, talked to Bill about it earlier, to come up with the highlights of each requested change and make sure that the newspaper and
The newspaper's
radio
got to
gets-
have it, but we should have copies up front.
Right.
So if somebody wants to stop in the office, they can just pick them up and see what the changes are. Go ahead, Jason, let us have it.
All right. Thanks, Dan. All right, just a little background. Rex gave some. Some of you heard it, most of you heard it in committee meetings, but this is almost similar to what we did 5 years ago. We recodified our ordinances. We accepted it as a whole book. That time frame is up, so we're in the process of doing that again. At that time, it came to council, it was about a minimum of 14 pages that we went through at that time. But those were our changes, those were legislative changes. The hope doing it this time is that we get our city changes, any proposed city changes done before we send it to, who we used last time was Iowa Codification, before we send it to them to add all the legislative stuff. So when they come back with theirs, it won't be 14 pages anymore. Hopefully it's like 1 or 2, but that will happen fiscal year 15, so July 1st is when we will get, we'll hire them to do that stuff. But where these came from was myself going through the ordinances, plus I also asked department heads to go through it, suggest any changes. They were to go through their sections that they, not necessarily responsible for, but applied to, whether it was water department, wastewater, streets, fire, and come back and give me any suggestions or proposals that they might have. So that's where this list came from. We did take it to those committees that would have a say in that particular section of the code. It did go to them, so that list did get changed a little bit from those committee meetings. So what you have before you now is the final recommendations, I guess, up to this point. I mean, unless today, or at the public hearing, or the second reading, little tweaks are made to those yet, so. So do you want me to go through each one quickly?
Go through each one, as much detail as you think is necessary for the public to understand what we're doing.
Okay, and you already mentioned it, we'll make them, both the paper and the radio do have their packet, but if you need more copies, I can get you guys copies of them. We can make them available here. It's a public hearing, so it's going to be in the paper anyway. But we'll start with winter parking restrictions. That would apply to our current odd-even parking. This was brought forward because of maybe the confusion of the odd-even parking policy the difficulty enforcing it as it is, difficulty of the street department to still clear streets because of cars or vehicles on the streets. So before you, what I did with all of these is the section is listed. I put together just a little explanation of why the change was brought forward. And then the new version, well, the old version, striking out what is being taken out, and then the new language being put in to that section. But what this is going to do, or as proposed, is what it's going to do is any vehicle, any trailer, anything that you could park on the street, okay, would not be allowed to be parked there from December 1st to March 31st at all, unless it's posted otherwise, and examples of that would be downtown. Right now, our downtown parking is, you can't park there from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. That won't change. You'll be able to park there anytime other than that. So it's not going to restrict parking there. It's mainly going to affect our residential areas, is what it'll do. I don't know if you want me to read that word for word.
Please.
Okay. The way it reads, parking of any kind of vehicle, trailer, or apparatus of any nature will not be allowed on any of the streets, avenues, or alley right-of-ways within the city from December 1st to March 31st and during snow events unless otherwise posted. No parking of any kind of vehicle, trailer, or apparatus of any nature will be allowed on any street, avenue, or alley right-of-way until such time as snow has been cleared.
Okay, so a couple of clarifications. When we first discussed that, I kind of thought you were going with overnight parking, but this would be anytime. So if you've got a group gathering at a home, they can't park on the street from 5 to 7? According to this.
As written,
Stu can
yes.
come over
Yeah.
and write a ticket.
As written, yes.
And there's some areas that people can't physically park on their property. I can show you some areas in town where they have to park on the street. They have no option.
Well, there'll be issues, yeah. Yep.
But I mean, to just close the door on those people is not the right thing to do. We're gonna have to figure out something that's gonna work for those people.
That would probably
Well-
be taken care of by the sign in
Okay.
front of that saying parking is allowed at a certain time, just like downtown.
The whole intent here, John, is to, if this goes through as written, I mean, let's all hope that we're getting towards the end of this winter season. But go into effect, whatever notifications we have to do. I mean, sure, we'll do enough in the paper. Word of mouth is going to go a long ways to get people aware of this. And so throughout the spring and summer and fall, if they do have issues, like John mentioned, they can contact me. I can work with them, let them know what can be done, what can't be done. Hopefully that's a long enough time to where we get some of those areas where it's going to be difficult, maybe try to find some solutions.
The committee's intent clearly was that this would become effective for next December 1 and not this season. And it's because of what Rex said. It's going to take a public hearing, which is a month out, plus 3 readings after that, or 2, which means that you're going to be basically into April, the middle part of April. So that'll give all of 2014 construction season, spring, summer, and fall, for people to make accommodations.
Couple things. If we want to warn people starting a couple months in advance, the PD could, just have a sheet that they leave on windshields that would say, hey, upcoming, starting X days, rather than a ticket. And that way we would lessen the excuse period once it was in effect. I'm gonna bring up a kind of a weird one. I would really like to see us change December 1st to October 1st for odd even parking. My thinking there is, we just spent $250,000 on a street sweeper. Steve sends one of his guys down the road to do whatever avenue. And he's weaving in and out, and we're missing half of the leaves. Not because he's being sloppy, but because we've got major leaks, and we're trying to keep them out of our storm sewers. My personal opinion is to accommodate some of that fall cleanup too with this. You can get snows in October, probably won't, but I would like to see the dates extended. So that's my 2 cents. Chink, chink.
I might suggest something we did when we were talking about the solid waste issue. We had hardship forms that people could fill out so they could get a smaller dumpster. And the committee sat down and went through those, and it worked quite well. And we were surprised how few we got. But at the time, at least they could come to City Hall, fill out a form, and know somebody was going to follow up and talk to them. So you might consider something like that be available early on, and then let staff work with the people to solve the problem.
See, and I think that the biggest issue, I wouldn't be for extending the dates. I think it's going to be hassle as it is. But I think, if we're going to go to something like this or consider it, it needs to be more the overnight hours, not necessarily the 2 to 6, but for no parking for set hours, which would essentially be overnight, so that the crews can get out early in the morning, whatever, so that it's not an issue. If you are driving to somebody's house, you don't want to block their driveway because they may need their vehicle in and out, whatever, you can park on that street. Right now, there's no issue parking on the street, but yet we couldn't with the way that this is written. So mine would be to do something to the effect of no overnight parking, or in the case of 2 or more inches of snow. I mean, something that's very specific. If there's no snow on the ground, you should be able to park.
Right.
So because the goal here is to make it easier for the snow to be cleared. And it is a pain. If snow is cleared around a vehicle, then you've got that stuck out there even after that car pulls away. I can understand that. So I'm not opposed to it completely, but you also don't want to institute something that is so sweeping, so broad, that it makes it a hassle to, we've heard this numerous times recently, it's not friendly to not be able to park on the street and
Point of
go see your
constant
neighbor.
irritation.
Yeah, yeah. If it's 2 inches of snow or more, you're used to seeing that in different communities. That's, standard on a sign. And, also the no overnight parking. We've got that downtown. So those would be my 2 suggestions, would be to have it in place for when it's needed, but I don't want it written like this and then just say, oh, well, we'll ignore it when there's no snow on the ground. Because I get tired of having ordinances that we then ignore.
I think you'll get plenty more suggestions in the next month. But
Well, I was just going to ask that, Rex.
But
Let's
let's
go into public hearing, though, we gotta decide.
Well,
I was just going to say, because
I
right
think-
now,
I think this has got to go to public hearing, but it can be changed, because the ordinance can be changed. Every reading, the ordinance can be changed or modified to get to where everybody's okay. And if it takes longer, after a public hearing, it's going to take longer.
And I assume when it comes to actually voting on the ordinances, we'll do those one at a time.
Right.
Picking up
Because some
on-
of them, it's not an issue, but like this one is going to be major.
Picking up on what Clark said, maybe this one would be good for a night hearing.
Yep. Yep, I
Get
just,
the people out, because there are
I
going to
think
be a
there's
lot
2
of
of
unhappy
them
people.
in here that would be good for a night hearing.
Right.
but, I think you'll hear more about this. Let's get it out to the public. Let's see what the public has. You can obviously see that you've got the council engaged on this one. So,
And then we don't all agree, so this is really going to be fun.
let's give us some of the other ones so we can show that we're not
All right, let's go
Totally
forward.
ridiculous.
Section 90.05, compliance with the plumbing code. This is a simple one. All it does is, current code says that we go by international plumbing code. We do not. We go by the state of Iowa plumbing code. So this is just correcting a error in our current ordinances. So that was pretty simple.
Okay.
Any comments on that?
Oh, we
one?
like that one. Go for it.
Keep them like that.
All right, 9104, another water one, location of meters. What this does is the city is doing away with remote readers. This section talked about the placement of meters in homes or businesses, accessible, plus they had to be, do you all know what the remote readers were?
Yep, the little black ones on the outside.
That used to be on the outside of your home, with the wire going down to the meter. So when we came to read the meter, all we had to do is just swipe that little reader and, okay. We're not doing those anymore, so we don't need it in our code.
This will have an impact on your 4 mobile home parks that are non-compliant at this time.
Next one, section 105.11 has to do with solid waste collection. Right now, I'll do the little explanation here. Right now, the city's solid waste collector deals with the problem of people putting garbage, the refuse, the household garbage, into recyclable containers. And it happens because their garbage tote gets full, and here's another blue tote, and they throw it in there. Right now, the way that's handled is Vans puts a sticker on it and doesn't pick it up. Okay, so then the intent is for them to call Vans, sometimes they call City Hall, but call Vans and find out why it wasn't picked up. Adding this into our code, as you can see there, it would be mixing, deposit refuse into a recyclable container. What it does is Vans can continue to do what they have been doing, but the burden of enforcing it will become the city's, which means it will become finable if they continue to do that. Right now, there is no, they just don't pick it up. If they continue to do it, then we can fine them by our ordinance.
I would just suggest adding the words non-recyclable, so depositing non-recyclable refuse in a recycled container, simply because, to me, my leftover papers, milk cartons, all of that is refuse. It's just, do I put it in the blue or the gray?
Clean or the dirty?
Yeah.
Garbage.
Yeah.
And what about yard waste in the regular? That's prohibited practice too. That's why I don't know that you can just define it that way, because if I'm throwing 6 dead tomato plants in my regular garbage, that's just as frowned upon, I believe.
Very good point.
Is that already?
I would have
addressed?
to look at that, Clark, because I think the definitions are already in our code, and not knowing exactly word for word what refuse is. I know at the time when I was trying to write that up, I looked at that and I thought refuse covered all of that, but I can double check that.
Otherwise, you could simply say refuse or yard waste in the recyclable container.
Or organics, organics.
Jason, though, but is it not possible if you've got a twig, for instance, you can put that in your garbage container? Not a whole. But if you pick up a twig
I don't
off the
believe you're
yard and
supposed
cut
to.
it up.
I don't think we're
Are
supposed
they
What
gonna-
size is the
Are they
twig?
gonna dig for it?
I don't think you can do that now, Joe.
Okay. You bet. No, I have not. I have a container of twigs in it.
No, I'm just kidding, I'm just kidding. I burn them in my fire pit.
We'll get to that one too, Clark.
We're getting to that one.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
well, we're going to touch on that a little bit right now.
I know.
Section 10505, open burning restricted. The way it goes now is to ensure notifications are made, inspections are done, and safety regulations are followed, fire chief is being added as the issuer of the permit. Okay? If you remember I don't want to say long ago, but years ago, open burning requests used to come to the council for approval. When David started, I think he brought it forward that he would just as soon like to handle those instead of the council. So that's been the practice since he started, but it's never been stated that way in our code.
Okay, so that's a winner. Next.
Okay, here is maybe the other big one. 13511, maintenance of parking or terrace, actually covers two different sections in the code. And also 15117, it all has to do with who is to maintain those trees between sidewalks and the street. Right now, what we have is the property owner, the abutting property owner, adjacent property owner, is supposed to maintain those. The general trimming of them, those type of things, picking up after them. And the city, what the city would do is if there was if you had a dead tree in that location, the city removed those trees. This change, these two changes, two sections, would no longer require the city to do that. The adjoining property owner would have to maintain them. If there was a dead limb in a tree, or if the entire tree was dead or dying, dangerous, it would be the property owner, adjacent property owner, that would be responsible for that tree. I don't know if you want me to read it. Actually, it only was just a matter of changing a few words in there.
Jason, what would happen if a person failed to maintain a dead tree or get the tree down? Will there be something in the ordinance with teeth that we can take them down and bill the property, or how are we going to handle that? Because I'm sure we're going to have that case arise.
Well, just like we did with this last fall when we went around and trimmed trees, notices were sent to those property owners that had trees to trim. Okay. This is going to work the same way, Ken. If they have a dead tree or a dangerous tree, and they don't do it, I mean, I'll notify them and give them a time frame to do it. And if they don't comply within that time frame, I mean, then our next step is to hire somebody to do it, or we do it ourselves. And then any cost that we incur from that would be, a bill would be sent to them. And then just like anything else, I mean, if it's not paid, then it gets taken to the courthouse and put against that property.
Is that under the nuisance ordinance then? Does it fall under
That whole process is, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And then it's come up a couple of times already, but under the current wording of the ordinance, there are people who have already contacted Public Works. Do we have a list of those, and do we intend to honor those promises, obligations, before, finish up what was already agreed to before anything new would take effect? And do we have a list of that? Of those names or properties that have already contacted Public Works?
Yeah, follow up with that. I did have somebody call me on this, and just very generically, they were told by the city that something would be taken care of. So they settled with their insurance company on that promise or conversation they had. And I can honestly say I don't know what parties said what for sure, but they settled with their insurance company, and they called me and said, we were under the impression, but now we've been notified that it's going to be our responsibility. I would follow up with Delana on that if this ordinance goes in, which I'm not overly opposed to by any means, I think it has to be after, or a starting point. And whatever has been said in the past needs to be honored, needs to be taken care of, and we go forward from the change forward. So, yeah, I'd follow up with that one.
We already did, that's past tense, we're already making that.
Okay.
Commitment,
Okay,
if it's been committed to.
okay.
Now, just because it got put on a list doesn't mean it was committed.
Okay.
People call or they put it on the email, a certain address, just because it's on the list, it depends if our people did a verbal
Right.
commitment.
I agree.
If they made a verbal commitment, we're gonna honor it,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, good.
Yep.
So basically, to make this simple for people, if there's a tree or there's bushes or there's shrubs or there's maintenance on the inside of the sidewalk towards the house, it's always been the homeowners, and now the homeowners is also going to be responsible for between the sidewalk and the street.
Well, they always have been, Rex.
But
With the exception of the dead,
Dead.
diseased, dying.
But now they're just responsible for everything, just like they think it really was theirs in the first place anyway.
From the back of the curb,
Yeah.
all the way, from the back of the curb, all the way to the end of the lot.
They-
It's theirs.
Yep.
Yeah, the exercise we went through last fall,
Yes.
pretty much, this was the code section that we exercised to get people to permit.
Yes.
So, yeah. Most people should realize that that's their responsibility.
Yep. Okay. Continue on, Jason?
New section, brand new section, 13515, private irrigation systems within right-of-way. Nuts and bolts of it is,
Basically, you
You
put
can-
it there, but we're not going to fix it
you
if we
can
break
do
it.
it, you can put them there, but you are completely responsible for them. The city's not going to take any liability if a snowplow happens to jump a curb and take out one or two sprinkler heads. That's the risk that you're going to have to take. If we come along with a project and need to replace a water main because it broke, we've had a few of those, we'll give notification that we're going to be working in that area, but the city's not going to pay the property owner to replace it, to move it. Your property owner, you put it there, you're going to be responsible, because really what it is you're putting private property on public property. You take the risk of doing that.
And we'll have notification go out to the plumbers or people that were aware of the sprinkler systems in, so they're aware of it, I would assume.
As far as what the backflow,
Yeah, the change in the ordinance.
that was actually, that all came up, Ken, if you remember when we went through our meter. I
Yeah.
think it was at that time, replacing those meters, we talked about all the backflow protection, and I remember talking about irrigation systems at that time, keeping the two separate so water from the irrigation system can't come back into your house and then be recirculated through. That's the whole intent of the backflow. But they can,
I just think that's the best place to get the homeowner notified if the plumbers are aware of the ordinance.
But as far as if work's being done, except for in the case of an emergency, the property owner will be contacted prior to work being done.
Yeah, I mean, like what happened a couple weeks ago where the water main busted. I mean, if Joe would've had a water main or irrigation system underneath the sidewalk outside his building. Over the weekend.
That was a fine.
In emergencies like that, Delano, where
In
it's
emergencies,
gotta be
you
taken care of
understand.
immediately.
Yeah, but planned work like the 3rd Avenue or the 4th Avenue or something like that, property owners will be given adequate notice,
Yeah.
preferably not the night before.
No.
Thank
Hey,
you.
back to this tree removal, and just to rewind for just 1 second, because I had a note here from my studies on it. Is it pertinent to put stumps have to be removed too? They are unsightly, and I think they're kind of a hassle and a headache, and you get a stump, and if we're making them take their own trees down, I say they go below ground and bring some dirt in.
Well, it can be added, yes, Clark, is that, but is
That's a good point.
that,
Yeah.
is that part of removing the tree?
Well, if you get a lot of growth coming out of stumps, and turns into a bush, or it turns into, they're not gonna like it, but the bottom line is, they're totally unsightly, and, it's part of the dang tree. And I think that needs to be added. I'll expect phone calls.
And yeah, that's easy enough, I think.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw that one in there.
I didn't know there was such a thing as a recreational fire, but I'm gonna find out about it.
All right.
Where have you lived?
Grilled a hot dog?
No, but I mean, he's already got 21 calls in him.
All right, last one.
If you're outside of the fire pit right now, you got issues.
Last one, 156.03, recreational fires. This is a new section. It has been city policy, these things that are listed here. This is what we've gone by, plus it's also been in our adopted fire code, some of these regulations. So it's what we've been adhering to anyway, but it's never been in our Code of Ordinances book. And what it does is it outlines the little, with the screen on the top, the little fire pits that you can go to Walmart or any hardware store and buy and sit in your backyard. This places the rules on where it can be placed on your property, what you can burn in it, how big it can be, those types of things.
Pretty descriptive.
Number 1, Jason, is that 10 feet?
There is no feet in there.
You say shall be located.
Thank you, Dennis.
Inches.
Yeah.
Great. Actually, Joe and I wrote these up a few years ago, and it matches our international fire code that we've adopted already. It's just, we have a sheet we hand out to the public when we go on a complaint. This way, if they come into City Hall and ask for a copy of the ordinance, it's right here, they can look at it. Hopefully to save us some complaint calls and things like that.
Good luck.
The only thing I had on this one is at the bottom of the page, it said recreational fire be immediately discontinued if it violates this section. And I just wanted to insert the words if the officer determines, or that whoever it is that, that it violates it. I don't know, maybe that's not important.
I think it's in the.
Where are you looking at? There's a bottom paragraph, Clark.
I think it does
Police
say-
officers, fire officers.
Are authorized to
Right at the very
require-
beginning of it.
Is deemed to be, violates this section is deemed, okay, and is deemed to be, okay, yep. I should read the whole thing, sorry.
And there you have it. I think Rex mentioned it already, the way it's set up with the numbered changes, maybe the content of some of these changes. We put this setting the public hearing a month out to give citizens an opportunity to contact you, contact City Hall, ask questions, suggestions.
Motion establishing March 18th, 2014 at 12 PM for a public hearing to change the Lamar's Code of Ordinance in accordance with the city staff and committee recommendations.
I'll make a second on that, just so I can add my comment on that. I think we should have it at that time in a month, and then if, depending on the number of comments we get and how confusing or not confusing it is at that point, we may need to have a night meeting.
Okay.
Just to go through it.
I'm concerned about how many people will be aware of the noon meeting. And if we have problems getting people here at noon,
Well,
they won't be here anyway.
I think that it's going to get published, and it's got a month's worth of activity. I'm not sure if we're going to wade through all the comments inside of a month, and if we just don't, if the council doesn't feel like it, we can still have another meeting after this one to have a night meeting. We just have to have one for sure that's notified, and then we can have more if we wanted to.
Well, and I almost think we can separate two sections, do the two or
Yep.
three that are going to be more controversial. I honestly don't think that anybody's going to care that we change the words International Plumbing Code to State of
Right.
Iowa Plumbing Code.
Agreed.
So, I think the parking restrictions, the tree trimming, and possibly the irrigation system, there may be questions on. But the rest of them, I almost think we can have two separate groupings. And, just get the easy ones done. And then let comments come in on the others.
If we set it out for a month, though, and we give people a chance to either call us or write us, then we can bifurcate this thing if we wanted to.
At that point, after the initial public hearing.
Because we gotta have the real public hearing, and we gotta have it at a certain time, then we can go through and change whatever we want.
And once we have that public hearing, then there's 3 readings
Right.
of
Well,
each ordinance.
And there could be,
Right.
there could be 5, because we could not vote on it some meeting, and then we go to the next meeting. So we can spend as much time as we want to after we have this, but this is an Iowa code requirement that we have this. Usually it's 2 weeks. The reason we're pushing out 2 more weeks is just so that people will call us, or call Jason.
I just wanted clarification on that. The public hearing will cover all of these,
Yeah, it covers all of it.
okay? But when they come to you for their readings, okay,
We can stop,
Individual.
start, or anything we want to.
they'll be individual.
Yep.
See, and so that's where we could have, say, the first reading of those 3 at an evening time,
Yep.
if we wanted to.
Yep.
So,
I think it gives us more flexibility if we have this first one a month out, and then we let the public know that we're willing to have more meetings and listen to more comments to make sure it gets done right, so we don't have to change it later in the summer.
I have no doubt we'll have plenty of people comments.
well, and,
Probably right.
just to remind the public, on the city website, under city government, all of our emails are listed. They can do one email and send it to all of us and city staff and, get it all taken care of at once. They're welcome to call each individually, but
So we got a motion to have it in a month. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. That was a challenging action item. Okay, Mayor, Council, anybody? Kenny,
Nothing, thank you.
Clark, John?
All I've got is, Scott, is there an update on the second bore attempt under Highway 60 bypass?
They have not started it yet.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
One more thing on the Iowa 3 West Trail, I'm requesting that we provide the public with a full cost accounting of the project, including dollars spent, dollars yet to be spent, including all in-kind labor costs from the city. So when the project's done, we want a full accounting of what the costs were.
It's a fair request.
Hey, Scott, follow up on that. How are we looking for our April 1st? Just update on April 1st sewage treatment plant.
The motor control center did not get shipped when they were predicted.
Okay.
The email just came in this morning, and I don't know, the exchange between the engineer and the contractor isn't completed yet. So the engineer was asking for additional information, and it wasn't contained in that first email.
Okay.
My only discussion was follow-up on previous discussions that I think were in the works, but nothing has happened yet. It came up during our safety portion of this, talking about the Highway 3, the bridge, all of that. 12th Street, need to get sidewalks in. The city portion that we've budgeted for that has to go in by Fire Station 2, we have to get that done. That has to be moved up on the priority list. We've been sitting on it for a couple of years with money budgeted. That needs to get done. Likewise, across from the school, we have a half-block section directly across from the middle school with no sidewalk on either side. I know property owners have been notified, but that has to get done. We are not meeting our ordinance. Our ordinance says if there is a place from sidewalk to go from and to, it needs to do it. It does not on the south side of 12th Street.
Okay.
So that needs to get done.
Yeah, you're talking from 4th Avenue West to the west.
Yeah, and completing up to 6th Avenue. There's some sections in there that are done, but not all of it.
I think the issue was always drainage, and I think that drainage problem has been solved, has it not?
Yeah.
So I agree with the way it needs.
But I mean, likewise, just like the property owners need to get theirs done, we have to get ours done that we've budgeted for over by the fire station, because once again, you've got that going to the Y, to the rec center, where kids go, and we need to have a sidewalk there. We aren't meeting our own ordinance.
We have a number of annual reports in front of us. Since we got a couple people here, we'll let them go, right?
I can do the ambulance one. He had an emergency call, so he asked if you have any questions, get a hold of him or put it on the agenda for next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
That's easy.
Thank you. That works.
I'll do mine as quickly if you'd like.
Please.
Staff hasn't changed since last year, if you open your page up. I should paginate these, but I didn't. The first page is complaints investigated by officers. Those are police investigation. I'm not going to go through each one of these. I'm only going to touch on any significant changes over the last year or two. The significant changes categories would be, we had 61 burglaries, and that is up from 29. So we had a significant increase in burglaries last year. And we had a reduction in drugs and alcohol complaints from, an increase from 67 to 82. And all other thefts are also increased. So burglaries and thefts, those types of complaints coming in and being investigated have increased quite a bit. Complaints total are pretty even across the board. The next page is calls for service. There again, the total number is real consistent with last year. Where we saw increase in categories is assist, fire, and ambulance. 546, that's an increase from 387. So there's a tick up there. And then also parking complaints are down. They were 458, now they're 269.
Hey, Stu, what's miscellaneous?
I think that.
What's miscellaneous? It's a big piece of the pie. I'm just curious what's miscellaneous. Give me a couple.
Where do you want me to start?
All right, forget it.
Everything that doesn't fit in one of those.
Okay, okay.
That would actually fit under animal complaints. Somebody would call us and say, I hear a noise in my house. The officers would go investigate that.
Okay. Okay, all right. Okay.
All the really interesting stuff is under miscellaneous.
It's really interesting. We want to know about it.
Total citations for the year, that's pretty self-explanatory. Accidents, that is also pretty self-explanatory. It's always good news when the accidents are down. The significant news there is that we only had 25 personal injuries. Last year we had 44. So not only were accidents down, but the severity of the accidents were down also. If you go to arrests, those are pretty consistent in the last few years. The only difference, significant difference in numbers there would be our burglary arrests, people that are arrested and charged with burglarizing either a residence or a business. And our arson charges, the previous years we had 0 arson charges, there were 4. Juvenile charges, if you look at the bar graph, it says 58, and then juvenile charges, it says 103. There were 58 individuals and then 103 charges. So there were some kids in there that had several charges. And the 51 burglaries is a part of that. Last year that was 15. In 13 it was 51. And then the training by officers and grants page, those are pretty self-explanatory. There are 2 things in here that are not listed. We took in 129, not 129, we serviced 129 individuals through our Project Safe Meds, and that's where they bring their unused prescription meds to our office, and we dispose of those, we incinerate those after a court order. So we had 129 of those last year, and we also conducted 15, they're actually OWI investigations where they're operating while intoxicated, but one of our officers is a certified drug recognition expert, and 15 of those OWIs were investigated for driving while drugged. So there's a little separation there. It's a completely different investigation outside of alcohol and drugs. It's a lot more in depth. That ought to do it. Any questions?
Good work.
Okay.
Yeah. Apologize, Stu, for not giving you more time. You guys do a fabulous job. We kind of spent a lot of time on other things today.
I feel darker.
Okay. Steve, you want to?
I'll try to keep it short and sweet too there. Last year, as years in past, I guess we were very busy. As you can see, we plowed with a little snow last year, not as bad as years past, but and we had a lot of rain, which affected our projects. So we removed 54 trees on the city right-of-ways. It took us about 20 days, and plus another 7 days for stumping. So from that comes some of the information you have that we're trying to change in the ordinance. April 2nd, we started on the 4th Avenue project up there, and from the time we started until May 1st, we had 3 ice and snow occasions on that, so then it started out real well. But we did get through it. I think it turned out quite nice. It was a lot of work, but it did turn out. So, and on there you can see all the things we did when we did do it, as far as driveway removals, painting, curb removals, all the gamut of things we did. Then on the 26th of May, we got blessed with a flood, which really made a mess out of our rec trail. And Brad will comment on that when he does his report. But we got through it. We did help reposition the approach on the golf course bridge, and I think since then it has been totally repaired by Quakers. So, and on the 29th, we did some rail repair in town. We had took delivery of 78, I believe it was, rail crossings and helped the UP with the removals and replacements on that to expedite the project. So we've got a really good working relationship with them fellas, and it's been good to work with them, and hopefully they keep the same people around, so in the years to come it'll continue to be that, because it went well. Around May, we went out and graded and rocked a temporary access to the wastewater treatment plant out there, which we are planning to take up this spring and reuse on the very north end of that new Key Avenue out there, so we can reclaim what we used once the frost is out. So that's an ongoing project which we'll be trying to finish once the frost is out this spring. Also, we graded and hydroseeded out on 27th Street Southwest, if you all remember the concrete project out there on the street in the business park. We applied over 20 loads of hydroseed out there, which some of the grass started, and hopefully the rest will come this spring. I've got my fingers crossed that we don't have to do any reseeding on it because we didn't get the moisture we really needed in the fall. And on October, we started, we put in approximately 468 feet of storm sewer pipe out on Key Avenue for drainage. This was not all of it. We had a contractor did some ADS pipe for us too, which is a plastic pipe. We just installed the concrete pipe, so that is all in, and I hope it all works this spring at all. It's looking good, so we don't look like we have a lot of moisture laying out there right now to melt. In this fall, of course, we took care of all the leaves out on our tree side out there, and we spread them in the field to the north, which we acquired through all the trades, and a little bit more to the west, and disced it all in so it would compost, and that went real well also. So we're in the process of setting that site up as a tree and leaf site out there right now, because we have our other site fairly well cleaned up. We're going to have to do some arrowing out there so people know where to go and how far north it is from the site that's there now, but I think it'll work out fine once it's all in place.
Steve, where are we picking up all the plastic bags that was in the leaves? Is that coming in from commercial? Is that coming in from where?
I believe so. I mean, the stuff that comes in the garbage trucks, it's whatever's in the dumpsters. They don't have any control, or I don't have any control over it. They don't have any control over it. Nobody's watching them. We have a guy that watches the site when it's open on our regular days, and he's very good at keeping an eye on that stuff, so.
I know what you put out on 27th Street out there was just an awful lot.
Right. And when we put that out like that, we end up going back and picking all that garbage up, because it's not just the leaves. You find everything in that mixture of stuff. I mean, everything. Chairs, bed rails, you name it, it's in there.
Diapers, I'm sure.
So, yeah, if it was just a clean product, there would be no work to it hardly at all. But you spend a day going back and cleaning the fields up. That's, you know, one of the reasons why we couldn't get it to go on that field out there to begin with, because the farmer didn't want it. But I assured him that it would be clean when we got done, so.
Does Vans have a policy of tagging people that do that?
Yard waste containers?
They have a camera in their truck. I don't know what their policy is as far as how they handle that, but they are able to watch what comes out of them containers when they dump them.
It seems like we probably ought to tighten that up a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
We can.
I agree.
Thank you.
Is there any way that you could, is there any way we could have the leaves dumped, so on a site where you're gonna take care of them rather than haul them and then take care of them, or is that kind of an impossible logistically? You get my question?
They dump themselves right now on our site.
Right, but then you haul them to a field to be.
And right now, the field is right next to our site, which makes
Okay.
it quite convenient.
Okay.
But what he's alluding to, we had some out on 27th, and we use those for cover and mulch before we seed it out there. And we actually have some windrows out there now that we're composting to get rid of.
Okay.
So it just gets to be an issue. I mean, they throw tree stumps, everything in there, so. This is just, this is the major stuff we did last year. We still do our regular projects of painting streets, alley grading, potholing, that type of stuff. This winter, we've assisted the water department several times in water leaks because of the magnitude of them.
And then can you just do a quick update on the revised schedule or current schedule as it stands now for the Public Works Building?
It is in our construction manager's arms at this moment. I believe Scott and him are working on it.
Ryan Wilchin is preparing the sub bids for the different components of work so that it can get going first thing in the spring.
Any other questions? Thank you. Thanks for your support.
Thanks, Steve.
Me again? Mine has the house on it. Just a few things, I guess. That first page, you'll see 185 nuisance notices. That is up from 86, actually, last year. Those are anything from not mowing, not shoveling. Anytime I have to notify somebody to take care of a problem, that's what those are. But then you'll see that in only 33 of those instances did the city actually have to step in and abate that nuisance. So, last year that was 86 notices, 41 abatements. So we had more action last year, I guess. The rest of that is just, you can see it comparing building, I guess, for this year. 23 total homes built compared to 13 last year, which is a good sign. And just laid out there is the rest of the permits that were issued throughout the year compared to last year. Then like normal, I give you a 10-year history of residential and commercial building. Some nice photos. On that last page, I want to point out what I added there was subdivisions. And what that underneath lots, that's what I have as far as unsold lots, not necessarily unbuilt upon lots, just I mean, they're not sold. There may be more lots in that subdivision, but they are sold to somebody. So that's an update on those 74 lots in town at the time I did this, which was a month and a half ago. Just a few things, I guess. I mean, those 23 homes that were built, economy's gotten a little bit better, but I think what had a lot to do with it was that tax exemption, that $75,000 that the council approved 2012, early to mid 2012. To date, we have had 36 properties take advantage of that. Actually getting, new homes do it, actually getting more interest in the people who remodel are taking advantage of that too. And that was the whole intent, is to improve your property, whether it's a new home or add to, or but there you go. That is mine. Any questions?
Was this before or after you
Suggestions?
sent out all the notices on the tree limbs? Are those counted in that 185 or not?
Oh, heavens, no.
That's what I thought.
No, not even close. That was 300 and something. But what's coming up next year is I've already sent out, and some of you may have gotten them if you live on an alley, is I've sent out notices to those people who live on alleys to take a look at it, clean them up. That was 831 notices that were sent out. So, that's coming up this summer.
So those were sent to everybody that lives on alleys, not necessarily
Everybody.
just where issues were seen?
Yep, yep. All I did was, everybody who had property abutting an alley was sent a notice.
Okay.
In the spring, and it was said in that notice that in the spring is when I will go out and I will physically drive the alleys. And then at that time, if there's still work to be done, then they'll be notified.
And not right before you go on vacation?
And hopefully it's not 800. Hey, it might be, Delana. Hopefully it's not 831 people that I have to notify in the spring. But.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
We see down there 2014 CIP. I just didn't know if we could maybe shove that off a little bit and just go through the highlights.
Well, that'd be good because it's not prepared.
Okay, great, because we're looking, so you got things, Bill?
I don't have anything.
You got something, Scott, that needs to be told to the council?
No.
Okay, because we've got a couple closed sessions to go into, or I guess a closed session and an employment condition session, to make sure that we're legally right. So